So the MFR now would give us the ability to completely customize it by ourselves. FBR right now, every time we want something customized, we have to take it to Hexagon, the chiefs have to call them, and we have to go through this kind of rigmarole with them. With the MFR, we can actually do that ourselves. So that's part of the software upgrade of what we're getting through this upgrade. The other side is going to be the hardware side of it. I did put a little bit in my memo about some of the hardware stuff that we're at. It would be replacing all of our virtual hardware and our virtual software, which we're currently running to the end of our support on the VM side of it. So to kind of make a long story short, if you look at my memo under the recommendations, based off of the demonstration that we had with the chiefs and a discussion I had with them on Tuesday at our chiefs meeting, Thursday of last week, they are all on board with moving forward with upgrading to the new system and the new hardware through Hexagon. If you look at the memo, the second part of the memo is the cost summary. If you're interested, if you're wondering what the cost, how that lays out, this cost summary is something that you've all seen before. It's the original cost summary that was sent out. If you look under year 4, the 2022, you'll see that there's 2 line items there towards the bottom of it under year 2022 under option for renew. As far as cost goes, the first item is the WebRMS upgrade program. That's the software side of it. That's for the $245,000. And the last line is the 30% of the hardware refresh, which is the $299. That is, ETSB is covering 70% of those common costs on that hardware refresh. So all that kind of said, as far as budget impact goes, we'll discuss that in a second, because we'll have to figure out if we move forward with this, how to budget. My question, or what I'm looking for from this committee, is direction on how to move forward with this. Are we interested in moving forward with the upgrade and renewing the contract for the next 5 years? Is there some legwork that you would like me to do to help make that decision? How do I guess I'm looking for direction on where do I want to move forward with, how to move forward with this to make a decision.
So if I may add to that, Hexagon is willing to work in arrears. So Dave mentioned the VMware end of life. So the hardware portion of this is a little bit more important, and we should do that sooner than later, as opposed to the software upgrades. And they're willing to work in arrears to the contract renewal if there's a commitment by this group and ETSB by September. So you have plenty of time to talk about it and get some additional numbers and background on whatever questions you may have. If there's a commitment to that renewal by September. So that's kind of what we're working with.
So overall, the hardware refresh is about $1 million. Is that?
Yes.
And then what was can you just clarify for me, what was the original? There was $3 million that we were looking to have set aside. Was that by year 8, or I'm just trying to remember wasn't there money built in for a hardware refresh at some point? And
so that's the option. This group and the users have been putting money aside. I don't know what that total is, Jeff, right now, but we're on year 3, I think. So I think we've put about, I think you're doing 400,000 a year, plus or minus. It might be more. So you could elect to take some money from your equipment replacement for that, or you could elect to bill and continue to add on. So and that's a finance recommendation, or a choice of the membership that's paying. So there's 2 options. But yeah, so the equipment replacement. So this is part of equipment replacement. So it would qualify if they chose to do that.
Just on my initial thinking, obviously, I know the new upgrades were very well received as far as the new program that will be coming out. And I also know the last year it really has been beneficial working directly with Hexagon too, and appreciate everyone's work to get it to where it is. I think for a lot of agencies, it's going to come down to what the cost per user is. So this year is that right? We're at 729. And if we put everything into the budget, it would go up to about 886 per user. Is that what I'm reading right? Whereas if we kept some of the equipment replacement out of the current stuff that we've already set aside, maybe we could minimize that increase a little bit. Is that what I'm seeing in year 4? Is the estimated cost per user would be 886 with all the upgrades?
Those numbers there were the original cost sheet, Chief. And but the second discussion point on this, or I guess the third one total, was the budget review, where I was going to go over some of the options for the budgets. That list you're seeing there does not include the RSA cost. So that 719 is not accurate, just, as is.
Okay, I guess just the thing I'm looking to avoid is a, 729 up to 886, then down to 816, and just to kind of smooth out what even, I guess I expect increases, but I know sticker shock, we just gotta try to avoid that. So that's why I wondered if the equipment replacement could be used for part of that to smooth that out, so.
Under the next discussion topic in my memo there, I discussed the decision that we'll need to make if we move forward with the upgrade. I don't know if I just dive into that too.
Kind of roll into the discussion of the budget, fiscal year 22 budget, because I think it has an impact on our discussions of renewing the contract.
It does. So when we look at the budget impact, the total cost, including the software and the hardware, we're coming in at about $546,000. So the question then becomes, A, do we pay that out of the equipment placement fund? And then if we pay it out of the equipment placement fund, I have a spreadsheet that shows that we do not charge agencies for contributions to the equipment placement fund within FY22. Or do we pay for it out of the equipment replacement fund and still charge the $400,000 contribution to keep that contribution building? Or do we not pay for it out of the equipment replacement fund and not charge for the contribution, but charge the $546,000 to the agencies in FY22? Does that make sense? So it's basically, we need to decide where we're paying it out of, if we're going to charge agencies, or if we can pay for it out of the equipment replacement fund.
If you want to.
No, I just, I was off on Friday, didn't have a chance to look at this. Dave, do you know how much is in the equipment replacement fund? How much?
I don't know currently. I do know this time last year, we had $600,000. So we do have money in it to pay. We should have another $400,000 into it, but I don't know how much has been collected.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure. Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Wondering is this a typical upgrade cost? So in 3 years, I think it was 3 years ago that we bought this. In 3 years, are we going to have a similar expense? Most likely. I mean, is this what's the trends tell us on what these upgrade costs are going to be? Is this ballpark for the future?
Well, as far as the hardware goes, it is ballpark for the hardware, because we started with our hardware is 5 years old. We started hardware early on in the implementation process. So if we buy the hardware now, upgrade the hardware now, we still have 5 years through the end of the contract for that. So we're not going to have to pay for more hardware through the end of the contract. We're not going to have to pay for more software either. I can't honestly tell you if it's ballpark. I think 240 for the software side, 245 to me sounds reasonable, but I don't really have much to base that off of. But the hardware is very reasonable.
Okay, and thank you, Dave. And then I'm sorry, when you say 245 is reasonable, is that, and I should know this and I don't, but is that an annual cost to upgrade it? Are we doing that every couple of years? How often are we upgrading the software?
This is 245 for the next 5 years. We won't pay any more upgrade costs for 5 years. Now, once
Okay.
5 years is up, we'll have to renegotiate the contract if we want to extend at that point and pay then. But for this contract, it's the last software upgrade payment.
Okay, well, then I think that makes it a little bit more simple for me. If we've got $600,000 in the bank, let's pay for it out of that. That's our only expense for the most part. And then I think going into the budget year, we should adjust that $400,000 down somewhat or accordingly based on now what we think is going to be the expense over the next 5 years and start preparing for what we want to do 5 years from now.
Is there any advantage to not taking the money out of the equipment replacement fund?
Yeah, the members will pay a lower contribution rate. So in 1 year, but I think the question is, what is on the horizon as far as capital equipment replacement in future years? If we, I don't know how we came up with the $400,000 annually, but what else are we looking at in the future, Dave, as far as capital equipment replacement?
We shouldn't be looking at anything through the 5 years of the contract, the remaining 5 years of the contract.
And then
The 400,000 was originally 600,000, which got lowered to 400,000 because the contract now is a little bit longer than what it was originally. And we had a figure of $3 million or so for the original capital cost, and we divided that by the amount of years to get that contribution, that the equipment replacement contribution number. So we can, and obviously this is just discussion because we have to prepare the budget and know how to move forward. So I can get the solid answer on how much money we actually have in the equipment replacement funds as of today, and bring that back to you so you know what we would draw that down if we use that to pay the $546,000. That we would have a good idea, and then we can estimate out the remainder years based off of what's left in the equipment replacement fund.
So if I'm reading that right, we probably have somewhere around $1 million, just based on your initial estimates. And if we spend, let's say we have 400,000 left after this, and we keep collecting 400,000 the next 5 years, we're going to be at 2.4 in 5 years to do a complete hardware replacement then too, right? Does that sound right? Or to be put towards equipment replacement?
Yeah, so the original reason was it was 3 million divided by the original length of the contract, so that the users would be self-funded at the end. And since we're now extending the contract because we did the amendment, so it's 3 years, and then we pushed it out longer on the backside. I think last year the discussion was to drop the number on the contribution because you had a longer period of time.
Mhm.
So the amount of money you need is going to depend really on whether 5 years from the upgrade, you want to go to a completely different system, which would be $3 million plus or minus, or if you're going to be in the same situation of just an upgrade, and then that would be less, and then you could adjust member contributions at that time. So that answers your question.
Okay.
So there's a bunch of options. So like, since they're continuing on, then with the same system, it makes sense to, we would qualify for the equipment replacement. It just depends on where you want to go.
So there's the potential of a $3 million upgrade in 5 years.
It would be around 6 roughly, yeah,
Or a refresh,
or refresh.
which is cheaper.
In theory, we've been surprised before. We don't tell them how much we're saving, but yeah. So the idea was that they would save for their own system. So that was the original number, and how it flexes from that point forward just really depends on where they're going.
Okay.
Can I ask, Dave, you said that Hexagon did a demonstration of the mobile field reporting that was received well. Are
Yes,
there
sir.
other jurisdictions that are currently using the MFR?
Well, that's a very frank conversation I had with the chiefs regarding this last week, before they make any kind of recommendation. It's a brand new product from FBR. From Hexagon. They haven't released it yet. They released it in September. They do have 2 other agencies that are implementing it currently, are going to be, or have just started implementation, will be their third. So no, there's not another agency out there that's running this. It is a new product. So I expressed to the chiefs my concern about being Hexagon's kind of their guinea pig, if you call it that, as far as moving away from it. The other, MFR answers a lot of our big hurdles, especially with data consistency between field reporting and RMS, and also the workflow process. And I think in the chief's mind, that kind of outweighed the hurdles that we're going to go through, that you always go through implementing a new system. But we do face some challenges. I do know that the technology that they're using, the coding and the applications they're using in the back end, those things have been around for been developed and are industry standards, and actually some of them are a little advanced for that. So it's very solid underpinnings to it. But no, nobody else is running it, and we are going to run into some issues, some struggles with that. But the chiefs seemed to think that they were okay with that, because you deal with that with any kind of implementation. But having the major hurdles of their concerns addressed to them outweighed the struggles on that side.
Any other thoughts? So what, I guess, what's the consensus of the committee here as to which way to move forward? I mean, I think using the replacement fund, the money in there, makes sense.
Well, I agree for 1 year, but the question then also is, do we continue to fund at $400,000?
For year 5 for the replacement.
Set money aside.
Right. So I guess, and I'm sure a lot will depend on if we go down this road, how successful the MFR is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it works the way it's supposed to and everyone's happy with it, I think, we'll be, my guess is the contributions would be less. Right?
Yeah.
Because we'd be thinking a refresh in 5 years as opposed to a whole new system.
If I could, I would suggest that we would keep the $400,000. And I'm always one for trying to be as cost conscious as possible, but keep it for another year. We'll evaluate how it's going. And then in a future budget year, we can always draw back, because it looks more and more likely that our refresh is going to work.
I agree.
I agree.
Does everyone kind of agree with that? And
I think the primary thing is, for ETSB's perspective, is the hardware is something that has to happen. So, we want to make sure everybody's comfortable with where we're at, and ETSB would want to go forward with the hardware. The CAD side is going to do, they're not going to move to on-call. They're going to do an update of 9.4 because they feel it has better functionality at this stage for the multiple agencies that we have, because on-call so new. So it's really the hardware thing. If we're all agreeing that we're going to do that, and we can, and you still have another meeting, the ETS board needs to know by September, but it's more of a budgeting thing. And then the other reason that we have some leeway, I think, on what those contributions are, is assuming that ETSB continues to budget the whole amount for this project, then it's paid in arrears, which gives the municipalities and the users a little bit of breathing room if you reduce it. And we have to move it around a little bit, right? So, I mean, for me, the first thing is, are we comfortable with the renewal and being able to, by September, giving them that, and then we can work. Because the other thing is, if we're going to do the renewal, I would want to sit down with them, and based on a couple of things, there had been some discussion about the VMware costs anyway, and I want to make sure we're not paying any more, although this group has added some new systems, so there might be some maintenance change costs. So we want to make sure we have total numbers for you to look at if a renewal is what you're interested in. And then give you firm numbers for a budget approval at the next meeting or out ahead of time so you can take a look at it, Dave Fieldman. You know, once we have some direction, we can put it together.
So,
I'd be in agreement with that, yeah.
okay, do we kind of have a consensus
I think so.
in terms of renewal and budgeting?
I guess the question would be what they want to see in the budget numbers. Dave Fieldman, what kind of things would you like to see in the budget spreadsheets then for these options?
Whatever Franz tells me I need to see, that's usually where I start. We've been doing this exercise like this for the last couple of years now. I think what's important is always overall cost of whatever it is we're purchasing. So I like to see the hardware stuff, the software stuff, and a multi-year layout so we get a good handle on what we're going to ultimately be paying. And then, of course, the impact on the fund balances, and most importantly, the impact on the end user payments. I think those are all the things that we just talked about. But I always like to see it all put together, and then with a recommendation from our finance experts that it's good, sound budgeting. So it sounds like we're on a track towards that.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Anything else before we move on to old business? All right. Is there any old business? None. Do we have any new business? New business? We need a motion and a second then for adjournment. Motion, Dustin. Second. Motion and a second, we need a motion.
Vesta,
Yes.
Wagner,
Did you get the leave?
Zerwin,
Yes.
Berlin,
Yes.
Bloom, Cronin.
Yes.
Fieldman,
Yes.
Franz.
Yes.
Martinovich,
Yes.
Hendrick. Oh, and Scalera, excuse me, sorry.
Yes.
All ayes.
Okay, our meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.